What's going on, CDL fans? Today we're talking about the best player on every team after Major 1, and I even took it a step further and I ranked all 4 players on each team. So we're going to go through every single player in the league and go through who I think is the best all the way to the worst on each team. And right before we hop into it, if you like CDL content, definitely sub to the channel. We're on the road to 4K subscribers, so thank you all for the support. And let's start it off with the LA Thieves. We're going to go from bottom of the standings to the top. So starting off LAT, Ghosty is definitely the best player on this team after the first major. He's by far been the more consistent player, the player who's kind of put up slightly better numbers, although the entire team has honestly been really disappointing. And then under him, I have Afro and Joe Deceives. You can swap these either way. For me personally, I think Afro's been a little bit better, but either way, you could literally go with either one at 2 or 3. And then Cammy, obviously, at 4. Obviously, as we know, Cammy and Joe Deceives are no longer on this team. Kremp and Nasty are coming in, which I think is a big upgrade on the roster and which I'm really excited to see play. But for me, I don't think it's much of a surprise that Ghosty is the best on the team after Major 1. Then to number 11, the Boston Breach. For me, I think Snoopy has been the best player on this team. Snoopy has had his moments where maybe he overheats, he doesn't really make the best or the smartest plays, or he falls off the map in like a round 10 game 5. But for me, I think he's been consistently the best player, followed up by Slasher, then Priesta, then Capsule. Honestly, for this team, I feel like you could really mix and match. I think overall, as a whole, they haven't really been great. Slasher was amazing in their 1 series on land, but that's literally only 1 series. Capsule, of course, is the one who got dropped, and ASIM is coming in. So for me, honestly, I don't even know if Capsule really was the worst player on this team. I think as a whole, this team is just kind of not playing great. But I definitely think in my mind, after watching the games and seeing the impact that a guy like Snoopy has, I would have him at number 1. Then at number 10 for the Royal Ravens, I do have Gwyn, Clayster, Tej, and then Fellow. This team is a hard one to rank, in my opinion. Fellow, I have at number 4 on this team because individually, his numbers and his impact isn't exactly that crazy. Online, honestly, numbers-wise at least, he wasn't that much better than GodRx. When they went to LAN, he actually played much better and was really, really solid. So it's really hard to balance too, because after joining the team, we've also seen Clayster play much better. So Fellow is the kind of guy who you could push up into 3rd or 2nd best even on this team. But for me, I definitely think Gwyn is number 1. The rookie has been really solid, pretty consistent throughout the entirety of the year of just being a good player. He's had maps where he hasn't been great, but he's had maps where he's also been exceptional. Clayster is another guy who I think has been relatively consistent. He's been putting up damage numbers, getting into a lot of engagements, and overall I think has been solid. And then Tej also has been pretty good since coming on the team. But like I said, as a fan who all they can go off of is what I watch and what I see on the stats side of things, it's really hard for me to judge the impact of a guy like Fellow. If you're a pro player watching this, you might think Fellow is higher because you understand the game at a higher level than fans like myself would. So I understand people who have Fellow higher, but for me, I have him at number 4 just because individually his numbers really haven't been that good. Then we go to the Vegas Legion, and for me, number 1 is definitely Attach. Attach has by far been the best player on this team, followed up by Nero, then Standy, then Purge. I think this team is very straightforward. Purge has obviously been the worst player on this team, although rumors came out this morning from the flank that the Legion are looking to move on from Standy and bring in Geo from Challengers. So that's very interesting because everyone thought if they were going to make a move, it would be for Purge, but it looks like Purge is actually going to be moving into that 2nd SMG role. So we'll see how the dynamic of that team changes if they do move on from Standy. But for me, it's definitely Attach and Nero as 1 and 2, and then Standy and Purge as 3 and 4. Then coming into the LA Gorillas, Diamond Con by far number 1. I don't think this is even a question. Diamond Con is probably a top 15 player in the league at this point, maybe. This guy has been really, really good this season, really consistent. And then after him, you can literally mix and match these last 3 guys. But for me, I have Fame 2, Estriel 3, Assault 4. I think Fame has been exceptional in Search and Destroy. The plays he makes, the way he's able to literally win them maps, especially in Search and Destroy, I think is something that's super, super great. And he plays a lot of the objective in Respawn, so I definitely wanted to put him in at number 2. I think Estriel's had a solid rookie season. Overall, he hasn't been super impressive or underwhelming. I think he's been perfectly kind of settled in the middle. And then for me, Assault honestly has been kind of solid. He just doesn't really get into a lot of engagements. He plays pretty slow. So for me, I'm going to value the guys who play faster, especially if they're putting up similar, if not better stats than someone who's playing slower. So for me, it's Diamond Con, Fame, Estriel, Assault. Then we come into Miami at number 1. And maybe this surprises some people, but for me, it's Vickle. I think Vickle has been really good. He's been solid in every game mode, but this guy has been one of the iciest, clutchest players in the league. He's made so many winning plays for his team, especially in Search and Destroy. This guy has won them maps, won them series single-handedly with some of the plays he's able to make. I definitely think he's number 1. Then I have Metals at 2. I think Metals has been pretty solid, been relatively consistent as the main SMG guy. Then Lucky 3, Journey 4. Obviously, Journey got dropped. Eric Boom is coming in. I think Lucky has been pretty good on the AR, honestly. As a whole, this team in Miami has been pretty solid. But I definitely want to give Vickle that respect and put him at number 1. Now getting into the top 6 with the Seattle Surge. Illy, undoubtedly number 1, right? Just from watching the maps as well as seeing the numbers. Illy is by far number 1, although the rumors are he is going to be replaced. We'll see what ends up happening with that and what the reasoning is for what's going on behind the scenes. And then at 2, I think you could go Abuza or HAVOK, but I edged it the way of Abuza. I think he's just been a little bit better overall in the game modes. I think HAVOK has been solid. Obviously, being the main SMG, it's you're kind of going to struggle a little bit in this game, which you'll see through a lot of these rankings. But for me, I have HAVOK, and then Arcides at 4. Obviously, Arcides at 4 is kind of expected. He just hasn't really been great. He's had some moments, but like I said, Illy's definitely 1. Abuza or HAVOK can go 2 for you either way. For me, it doesn't really matter. Next up, we have the New York Subliners. This team was a little bit hard to rank. For me, I'm going to put Skies at number 1 after Major 1. I think Skies has been pretty consistent at the Major. The whole team was bad, honestly, at the Major, but I think Skies has been consistent. He's also putting up really good numbers in every single game mode. His slaying numbers, especially for the main AR, are actually really, really good. The fact that he's able to keep up with the likes of Hydra in a lot of slaying ways, I think is crazy. And then Hydra, I have at number 2, Sib at 3, and Kiz at 4. Another main SMG and Kiz kind of settling into the back end of a team. It's just kind of the way MW3 works, right? The maps don't really cater to a main SMG player, which is unfortunate. Sib at 3, I think Sib has had really high highs and low lows so far this season. He's been a bit inconsistent, but when he's on, he looks really, really good. So for me, Sib, I definitely think has really good impact. But I'm going Skies 1. I think Skies has been really good this season. Next up, the Minnesota ROKKR. A team where I don't think there's a lot to debate here, right? Linz is obviously number 1. He's my rookie of the year at this point in the season after the first major in the quals. He's been incredible, honestly. He gets better every series. The dude is really, really fun to watch. He just looks like he's going to be a very good player in the league for many years. And then after him, I have Vivid, Accuracy, and then Wake. I think Vivid, as we've seen with Vivid in his career, he's a little bit inconsistent, but I think, honestly, since they started winning, he's found that consistency, which is a big part to why they've been winning. So I think Vivid has actually been pretty solid this season, followed up by Lamar. Lamar also has been really good. He looked pretty good on LAN as well. I think this is a team that if Wake gets going, who obviously I have at number 4, this team could be even better than they already are. And that's why they made a run at the major, in my opinion, because Wake looked better on LAN than he did online for sure. But I think without a doubt, Lin's number 1, no questions asked. Now for our top 3, OpTic Texas. Number 1 spot, I think you could debate between Pred and Kenny, but I went the way of Pred. I think as a whole, especially at the major, Pred was better. If we're looking at just online, I definitely would have had Kenny, but Pred was definitely better at the major. He's by far, I think, their best player on LAN. So I have him 1. Kenny 2, the guy has been putting up damage, putting up kills, leading in the comms. He's kind of doing everything and being a glue guy for the team, but also putting up those kills and those numbers, like I said, which is honestly really incredible to see out of Ken. Then I have Dashy 3, Shotzzy 4. Shotzzy, another main SMG guy who's at the back end of his team in these rankings. He makes plays, he hits routes, he gets behind, he rotates for hard points, he gets spawns. Shotzzy does a lot of plays that I think aren't exactly, so not something you see on the scoreboard. But as a whole, I still think the rest of his team, Dashy playing the objective and still getting kills, Kenny doing a bit of everything, Pred going crazy in the slaying department. Right now, this team, though, as a whole, obviously is very solid. Then to Atlanta FaZe, Simp 1. Really not a lot you could say about there. Simp was my MVP of the season up until the major, and then some Toronto Ultra guys took it over from him. But Simp, I still think is a top 3 player in the game. Followed up by Celium at 2. Cell, I think, is a top 5 player in the game. The guy puts up absolutely insane numbers. The dude is just incredible. The amount of impact that he can have and the consistency that he has is really good. He plays a slower AR role, which obviously tends to lead you to higher KD. But honestly, in the slaying department and in the Slayer rating sort of stats that you'll see on Breaking Point, he's actually up there and doing really well. Then I have Draws at number 3, Abizi at number 4. Abizi, another main SMG guy, falling to the side sort of on this team. His numbers haven't been great, definitely down from last year, and honestly just down from what we expect from Abe. I believe he's sitting at below a 1 KD at this point in time, which usually you expect Abe to at least be at like a 1.05 sort of deal. But like I said, these maps, this game does not cater to the SMG player. And that's why Simp, who's really good at flexing, Cell, and Draws are above Abe on this team. And then the number 1 team in the game, by far, the Toronto Ultra. Maybe I've seen some people go back and forth about this. Honestly, I think my number 1 player goes against what a lot of people say. I have Scrap at number 1. A lot of people would have Kleenex number 1, especially because he won the MVP at the major. For me, Scrap is the best player in the league at this point in time. Yes, he uses an AR, so maybe you value what Kleenex does with his sub, and you take that because he's obviously amazing, and you take that a little bit higher because he's using an SMG over Scrap with an AR. But Scrap plays fast. The dude puts up kills. I mean, he literally does everything. Like, the guy has the most kills and the most damage in, like, every single mode on his team. Even in modes in, like, SND, where Kleenex has a much higher KD, Scrap is putting up more damage in that mode by, I think it's by quite a big margin right now. So the dude's impact is just absolutely insane. And there's not much that needs to be said. I mean, obviously everyone knows how good Scrap is. I just think he's still number 1 in my opinion. Then Kleenex at 2. I obviously talked about him a bit already. The dude's insane as the main sub guy, I would say, on this team probably, right? He's just so good as a fast SMG player, especially in MW3. Then I have Insight at number 3 and Envoy at number 4. Honestly, it hurts a little bit to have Insight 3, Envoy 4 because they've both been really, really good. But when you have Scrap and Kleenex on your team as well so far this season, it makes sense. Insight has been very consistent. He makes winning plays. He's the iciest player in the league by far. And he's probably a top 5 player at this point in time. It's between him and Celium for best main AR in the game, in my opinion. And you could go either way, and I wouldn't question you about it. And then Envoy at 4. Envoy is another guy who makes winning plays. He makes the right play. He'll hit your routes. You know, he'll get your spawns. He'll make it hard for the other team because he enables his teammates so well, and he also can play a really annoying way where you never really know where Envoy is going to come from, right? You have Kleenex and Scrap hitting you out through the front. Envoy could be behind you. He could be through the front with his teammates. You never really know. And I think his playstyle really caters well to this Ultra team. But yeah, for me, I got Scrap 1, Kleenex 2, but you could swap them, like I said. And that is everyone ranked on their team so far through the first major. I'll maybe do this again after Major 2 if you guys enjoy this style of video. I obviously did my tier list video ranking all the players. So if you watched that, you probably had an idea of where I had people ranked in their individual teams. But I'm excited to see the Major 2 qualifiers get started in a couple weeks. Really see how these new rosters start playing and see how the rosters who stuck continue to play. But if you enjoy this content, sub to the channel, drop a like, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next video.